looks like the bad Monday.
Yeah.
So, I'd like to start out with a couple of business items for the week ahead and what you can look forward to. On Wednesday, you guys will turn in your journals for the first time. So make sure that you've completed your free writes beginning of class and any assignments that we do in them today. And potentially on Wednesday will also be looked at. All right? Again, free writes are not graded per se the way that you would assume. It's did you participate, did you fully exhaust your ideas, did you keep writing, or is it one word? If you're looking at a free write, you're obviously trying to put as much down on paper as you possibly can about whatever subject we're discussing. All right? So, I've been trying to kind of lead you guys in the direction of particular subject matter that we could study as a class and that we could read as a class in order to present that information in our paragraphs as we start to learn to develop to write those paragraphs and we start to break down our sentences. And today I thought that we'd go in a little bit of a different direction. Your free write today, they are quotes instead of pictures. So naturally we are visually impacted by the things that we see all around us, whether it be in media or in the world or interacting with others. We see things, we visually take them in. But our reading application is not as consistent. Okay, how many of you guys with movies that have subtitles perhaps turn off the subtitles? Right? When your subtitles, obviously in certain circumstances, that's not going to work out.
Well, for me, I turn them on.
You turn them on, right. But let's say if you have a movie that's in a foreign language and you have subtitles, the likelihood is that most people will actually refrain from renting that particular film because of the subtitles. I recognize in certain circumstances that's not the case. But in most cases, our reading or the context of our reading isn't as influential, as powerful each moment as our visual input. So,
it's the same way as watching a movie at the same time reading a book.
That's right. That's right. Reading a book versus watching a movie. If you had the option to watch a movie, I'd say a good percentage of people would actually watch the film instead of reading the book. But they create problems with that. Because what's the problem? Well, what's the problem? Movies are never the same as the book, right? How can you put 500 pages into an hour and a half or an hour and 50 minutes? They make an attempt, but oftentimes some detail is left out. So for today's opening, I want you to consider something a little different. I want you to respond to these quotes that I placed on this piece of paper in written form. Now, instead of just writing freely like you've done in the last couple of journal entries, I want you to start writing about this particular, either of the quotes or both of the quotes, whichever you like, in full sentence form. Okay? That's all I want you to do. You don't have to, it doesn't have to even make sense. It can just be a sentence about the quote. It could be about how it affects you. It could be a thought about the quote. Whatever it is that you want to write down is fine. So in that way, you're still free writing. You're still exercising sort of that freedom to write whatever you want. But I'm looking for a little bit more organization in your thoughts by creating sentences, whole sentences. Okay, and we're going to talk about what a whole sentence looks like today. And we're going to start to break down the patterns of writing and do a little review on what we learned in grammar last week. All right? So here's your quotes. Two of my favorite authors. One's a little bit easier to stomach than the other. And let me tell you why. So, Walt Whitman. How many of you are familiar with Walt Whitman or have ever heard this? Walt Whitman? Yeah? What do I know about Walt Whitman? Does anybody have any ideas about Walt Whitman? Raise your hand. Brian, you said you know Walt Whitman?
Vaguely, it was my humanities class about 2 years ago.
Aha,
but
okay. So you've heard the name.
I have heard the name,
Walt
yes.
Whitman, a poet.
Poet.
Very influential in natural poetry, if you will, was very much aware of his outer experience or visual input, like we were talking about with the pictures that you looked at. Only most were based in nature. And his experience was to sort of combine nature or compare nature, if you will, to the human condition or experience. So let your soul stand cool and composed before a million universes. See if you guys can come up with some ideas about this particular quote, whatever it brings to mind. What do you think about it? How does it affect you? What do these words mean? Do they have more meaning than just what's on the page? And then our second statement, no one is useless in the world who lightens the burdens of another. Now, believe it or not, that's the simplest Charles Dickens quote I could find. I used to teach Charles Dickens, and he is very long-winded, much like myself, you're probably thinking. So, boy, not even a giggle. Tough crowd. So, no one is useless in the world who lightens to the burdens of another. So, Charles Dickens, a great writer who was very long-winded and very detailed. You may have an opportunity to study in literature at some point. So, go ahead and do your 5 to 6 minutes. Let's do a little longer today just because I'm asking for a little bit more. If you're looking for sentences, pick one or the other. Do both if you like. Okay?
Did you already collect the homework?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Okay.
There's 2 minutes.
Free write. It's an open free write, but you're writing in sentence form. That's the only difference. So what are your thoughts on it? How does it affect you? What do you think it means? That type of stuff. Imagine it to be a picture, but instead it's a quotation of words. Okay?
Are only free writing exercises going into our journals? Like, is there anything else?
If there's, right now there has not been. We've just been using the journals as a free writing exercise.
Okay.
But again, we're trying to start to make our free writes turn into a format or a formula of some sense. And we'll talk about what that formula looks like pretty soon.
On both of them or both in a sentence?
You can choose one or the other. You can
Okay.
use both. You can. It's your discretion. At your discretion. Take your time. Don't feel overwhelmed. couple more minutes? Finish up your thoughts last minute. So how many of you wrote a personal experience? Something that relates to you personally in regards to these quotes. How many of you used the word I in your paragraph? Yeah?
Not at the beginning.
Not at the beginning, good, so we got you away from that.
Not as much.
Not as much.
Trying to keep
Good.
to the subject versus I.
Good. So it seems as though you were affected by these. When you had pictures in front of you, there weren't as many of you writing rapidly and as involved and engaged as you were in this particular assignment. So why don't we discuss that for just a brief minute, all right? I don't want to get too much into detail in your content, but I always like to have an opportunity to get the insights that you offer about the subject matter. So what about this? Let your soul stand cool and composed before a million universes. Who would like to offer anything that they came up with around this? Go ahead.
Don't let yourself become overwhelmed by the world around you.
Good. So there, we can translate that into not letting yourself be overwhelmed by the world around you. Okay, good. Anybody else?
Same thing.
Same thing?
Yeah.
Yeah? That's all you wrote? I mean, you have like
Nah.
3 pages there, Brian.
What the gentleman just said, and pretty much same philosophy, same thought.
Same thought, same philosophy. That's all right. Good.
Mine was a little bit opposite. The
Okay.
first part was let your soul stand cool. So when I was reading that, it made me think of when I need to write something or I need to think about something, I kind of go like a meditation state of just relaxation to be cool. And then what happens is my mind starts thinking more clearly about things, and that's would be part of the composing of a million things.
Interesting. Good. So you're thinking of both sides of an argument in some ways there.
Yeah.
Good. And this is kind of a way to focus on a comparative role of language. Think about it. If you were to say, let your soul stand cool, right? If you're cold to something, or you're cool to something, do you sort of present an emotional response? Being cool, or being cold, if you will, to something, putting up a boundary or a wall doesn't necessarily allow for an emotional response, right? But yet we naturally go toward the idea, in this particular statement, of presenting a strong front of emotion, as if we're witnessing a lot and being overwhelmed by that, but it's that strong front that we're presenting. And that strong front almost indicates some kind of emotional response. Whereas this statement, I think, actually says the opposite in some ways. It says presenting that strong front in a cold manner that isn't emotionally responsive to the circumstance. Did anybody else kind of get that interpretation or that blend of ideas? Michael? You did. Good. Who chose the second one? Did anybody choose the second one? Okay. Mark, what did you come up with for this?
Meaning of our purpose in life, when we do things for others, whether free or not, we are lightening a burden from someone who can't do it alone. It is good to help, and you help others, you are also helping yourself.
Good. Nice. Very good interpretation. I think that its statement is a little bit more specific, right? Dickens is saying that there is purpose in the world in some way, right? And offering his interpretation of what that purpose might be. Sandra, you had your hand up?
Yes. Well, I got a little lost in the quote, but as I was thinking about it, it got better and better. I had imagined at first its meaning, was the world and who is responsible for, who can do, who could take responsibility for, say, nature and peace and.
Is this in reference to the first or the second quote?
The second
The
quote.
second quote. No one is useless in the world, so, okay, who lightens the burdens of another? So you're thinking in the general context, the bigger perspective of the world. The natural experience?
I would say, for example, like a person, no one, is useless in the world. Maybe I misunderstood what I am reading
No
here.
misunderstanding. No, interpretation is genuine.
Right. Maybe mine is different, but no one who's willing to take the world's responsibilities, like world peace, that kind of thing.
Got it. Okay. I think that that's a good interpretation, and I think that it actually has merit in relationship to your particular view, and there's a reason why I say that specifically in reference to the notes we took last week. Let me get a couple of more ideas before we move on, though, okay? Saul, what'd you come up with? Sorry.
Mine is him like him. It's like if you want to be like help to be liked by other people, so help others and like lighten their burden.
By lightening their burdens, by taking on some kind. Are there any connections you see between these quotes all of a sudden? I mean, you made a statement, you're saying, help another person by lightening their burden, and the first one said, stand cool and composed against a million universes. Is there any kind of connection? Can you guys see any sort of connection in these?
Yes.
Yeah? Can you tell me about that, Maria?
Well, I feel that in the first one, it's kind of telling you to stop stressing
Okay.
and relax.
Yeah.
It's hard to do these
Good.
days. Yeah, exactly.
I know.
It's hard.
This is a stress-free zone in here.
Yeah, and then and the second one kind of like the same thing because it's giving you that even though, some people are more, like she was saying, light into responsibility, other ones get all that burn and, wear it out, so it's stressing on also as part of it.
So the connection in some ways is this sort of emotional response to the world around us and how we gain sort of our foot underneath that, or get our feet underneath that, right? Get our ground, right? Okay, so I would agree with you on that. Notice that you're coming up with an underlying meaning here, language, right? So when you guys go on, say, a literature class, and they say, what's the theme, right? Or what's the intended meaning of the writer? These are literature samples, okay? These are writers of fiction, right? Not necessarily nonfiction, and we're going to focus on both in this class. But fiction, in this case, offers us meaning below the words. So there's a reason why I use these two quotes, first of all, and there's a reason why reading quotations in literature is of value, okay? Both in relationship to the technique of our own writing and also the interpretation of others' writing, right? So for this, for example, I'm looking at subject, audience, and purpose. Oh, those things sound familiar, right? Because we're reviewing from last week. Okay, so last week I put a couple things on the board and I said, gee, these are the important components of written material that we study. Okay? Subject is the aspect of the bigger topic that's more manageable. So if we broke down that first statement and we were talking about this big picture, right? Standing cool and composed of a million universes. I mean, that's just a ridiculous image in its own right, isn't it? I'm thinking of tons of stars and crazy planetary systems and all this, even information that we are exposed to in our daily lives is a lot. That's a million universes, right? So what is that smaller subject that we're looking for? Can we write about that? Can we write about this idea of standing cool and composed against a million things?
No.
That's
I got a
huge.
different meaning and it has nothing to do with the universe.
So what subject can we pull from this bigger, larger scale statement? What can we pull from this? What subject? Yeah.
Maybe a personal experience?
A personal experience, sure.
So
So
saying your.
So it's saying your, right?
Yeah.
So let's go down to here where we're talking about purpose. Maybe the purpose of this particular writer was to tell a story, or to offer some kind of insight through a story, right? That's where personal narrative comes in. We are very quick to write personal narrative. Every time I give you guys an opportunity to write in your journals, I'll bet when I read most of them this weekend, they will have an I statement in them. They will talk about a personal experience that you had. They will talk about who you are as a person. And that's great. That's all wonderful information. Because guess what? What is it that we have to write about? It's the things that we know and understand. But in collegiate writing, or in writing at the college level, you guys have to start thinking more about the subjects than your own personal experience of the subjects. Okay? Because the information you're going to gain in your future English classes has to come from what we consider to be collegiate sources. Okay? Are these collegiate sources?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Walt Whitman, Charles Dickens, but these are literary sources. I'm discussing collegiate sources that come from a non-fiction place. Everybody understand the difference between fiction and non-fiction? Fiction is make-up, make-believe stories, and non-fiction is real-life, research-based material. Okay? So we want to focus a little bit on both in this class, and we're going to use our own understanding of how to write already to be our beginning place. Okay? We have to start with our personal experience because it's what we're most familiar with, and then move away from that and start to write subject-based analysis, or things that we study. Okay? Everybody clear on that? So if I'm looking at my subject, in this case, it's an aspect of the bigger topic that's manageable, that we have personal knowledge about, that brings in our emotions, our passion, and the material that we've studied in the past, and its personal effect on us, right? Okay, well this is going to have that because it's literature. That's the intention of literature, is to provide you with meaning to life. I mean, essentially, right? In your outward experience. Now, who's my audience? Well, you guys are the audience. You're pulling from your personal experience to decipher language. That's the beauty of literature. There is no one meaning. Sure, the author has something to say, and they pass it along to you, and they have that intention of doing it, but you're going to interpret it a different way because you're human, and you have your own experience. So you're the reader in this case. Now, when you go to write something for this class, and later English classes, or history classes, political science classes, whatever you decide to take, you're going to have to write things that are based in analysis, which means studying a topic and then bringing information to light about that topic, okay? And we have to focus on that in this class. We do that starting with the sentence and working our way all the way up to the essay, all right? So, knowledge that you already have, must they be convinced? Is this a statement that needs to convince you of something?
No.
Is this person trying to convince you of something, the top one?
No.
No. So what's the point? What is it? What
It's
would we
telling
call
you
that?
something.
It's telling you something.
It's telling you.
What's he doing? What's his purpose?
He's telling you that the second one is telling you that no one in this world is useless. You could do something of some sort to help somebody.
Good. So what do we call these two statements? They are designed to do something, though, like a verb, to do something. What are they? To motivate. Good. Or to, can we say the word, did you guys ever, who's a mom?
Mom?
Give advice?
Yep.
Ever give advice? Yeah?
All the time.
All the time, right? Sandra, always giving advice. Okay? This is how you should do things. This is how you should be. This is a better way to move forward. Okay? So these are obviously pieces of advice. So what is the purpose of these two writers? What are the purposes? To give advice, to motivate, to advise.
To teach.
To advise, to teach, to advise. Good. So now we have our purpose, and then we're looking at whether or not they've achieved that purpose through their writing. Yeah, it's pretty good writing. I'm still wondering what that subject is, though. I want you to look in your written samples for a minute. Do that for me. This is what's called content. We're studying content, okay? That's content. This is the content. This is how we approach the content. Let's look at how we write it. Last time we talked and started to get into breaking down our writing, we were discussing a couple of things. One of them was topic, and one of them was a subject. Okay? You guys are going to want to have some notes out at some point here soon so that you can write down information that's on the board. We're going to get back to our grammar study today, but we're going to coincide that grammatical structure, that study of the grammatical structure of language, with what the meaning of the words happens to be. Okay, so you're looking at, say, a subject and knowing that it has a relative part of speech, a connection to the part of speech. So up here, topic and subject. Topic and subject. Yes, I would assume so. So topic and subject. Who can tell me the difference? Who knows? Who knows the bigger? The bigger of the two.
The topic is like the main idea. The title.
Okay.
The title,
Overall.
yeah, title. And then the subject is what you're going to be talking about in that overall main idea.
Okay, so the subject
If
is
it's about a
a.
person,
Huh?
if it's about a person, place, or thing, that'd be the subject.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Good. So we have to look at things from two different standpoints. All right.
Yeah.
So a subject in a sentence is a small piece of the sentence. That's the easiest way to define a subject, right?
That's
So a
the first
subject, so let's look at subject here. Subject is the main focus of a smaller piece of writing. Okay? That's what a subject is. Now, if it's the subject is the main focus of a smaller piece of writing, give me an example of a smaller piece of writing. What's the name of a smaller piece? It's simple answer.
A small piece of writing.
A small piece of writing. What's the smallest piece of writing? A note. Good. Or could I even, what about this? What about a sentence?
Yeah.
Right? So an example would be a sentence, or maybe a paragraph. Is a subject going to be the entire essay? What if would I consider an essay a small piece of writing? No. Let's go back to what our purpose is: to write, to explain, to convince, all these things, right? We know that there is the personal side of writing. You guys want to write down your personal experience. So one of the things that might be a smaller piece of writing would be called a personal narrative, which is the story of you. Very easily written with I and you and all the personal pronouns that I want you to start to avoid. And we're going to get there in a minute. So a sentence, a paragraph, and a personal narrative all have a smaller focus, okay? Not the topic. For instance, if I were to write, let's see. Let's go back to our first example. It was a really good example. Soup. This is my topic. So what are my subjects?
Chicken.
Okay, so now you're breaking it down by the pieces of the soup, right? That's good. That's a good start. What else could be in there? We could say vegetables.
Campbell, the
Right.
name of it.
Okay. Now hold on a second.
No.
Hang on. No, you're on the right track.
Chicken soup.
Chicken, soup, vegetables are in it. The broth is a part of it, right? These are all water. Okay, these are all smaller subjects. Is that right? Yeah? When the topic is soup, we could discuss the chicken that's in the soup, the vegetables that are in the soup, the broth that's in the soup, the water that's in the soup, right? But what else could we talk about in relationship to soup?
How it tastes.
The taste. Now we're getting somewhere. What else?
The aroma.
Ah,
It's
the
hot.
smell. The what?
It's hot.
Okay, it's temperature.
It's hot.
What else? What else can we talk about it?
Cooking directions?
Cooking directions. There we go.
Direction.
Bless you.
Where you like to eat it.
Okay,
Like
locations. Locations to eat. Good.
Yeah.
These are all smaller subjects. We don't have to go too into detail on these right now, but these are subjects of writing. Okay? Are these subjects of sentences? Are these small enough to be subjects of sentences? Let me ask you a question. The broth tastes good.
Yeah.
The broth tastes good. How's that? If I write that down and I look at the topic of soup, have I created a sentence that identifies a smaller subject?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And I know that my subject is the word broth, is that correct? Yeah? Okay. Notice a couple of things about this sentence. The first one is, it's not personal, is it? It has nothing to do with you. Right? What does it have to do with?
Just the
Broth.
Soup. Random soup. Any kind of soup. Could be anybody's soup. Right? But it's the broth of the soup. That's what I know. So it doesn't offer us much specific detail. But it also doesn't offer us any personal connection to the soup at this point. We're just writing about broth. That's it. Okay? So the broth tastes good. Does this indicate... How do I know that if I'm not adding personal information?
How do you know what it tastes?
How do I know it tastes good?
Because you ate it.
Ah, wrong.
Because you ate it.
No, because we just said that it was a personal, it can't be personal. So how do I know it tastes good?
Because people eat it?
People eat it. Okay, well, you know, people have to live.
Everybody got to
So I mean, they might eat it just because they're hungry, you know? It might not taste good, it might taste horrible.
I know.
Sandra?
Or maybe the chicken soup recipe says it must have broth in it.
Okay.
So that's how you would make it.
But how do I know that it tastes good? I don't know. Without sampling. David, you were on the right track. You guys were on the right track.
Because you
were-
read the ingredients. I don't know.
David, go ahead. Thanks for raising your hand.
I was gonna say, maybe like a friend ate it and they told you it tastes good.
Okay, good. So, but that's still a piece of personal experience, right? So,
Yeah.
so let me ask you this: have you guys ever done? Oh, Mark, you like Dasani? Sorry, I'm taking your water away for a minute. I'm not touching the top, though. Okay. I'm an Aquafina guy. Now, can you distinguish the difference between those two waters in taste?
No.
You can't. Has anybody here had water? How about Crystal Geyser? Can you distinguish the difference in taste between Crystal Geyser and Aquafina? You can. Interestingly enough, you might think that Crystal Geyser tastes good. And I think Aquafina
Yeah, they
tastes
taste
good.
different.
They do taste different, right? That one's better, that one's not as good. Okay, well, how do I justify one being better than the other if it's not from personal experience?
Research?
Good, there we go. Now we're on the right track. Excellent job, Sandra. So if I'm using research, what specifically would I say about research? It can't be about personal experience. I'm trying to get you guys to think a little differently about your writing. Michael?
I would say how they make it and reviews.
Okay, reviews. There we go. So if I'm going to say, what could I write as a sentence if my subject happens to now be about personal reviews or reviews of people? We call those test groups, but we'll stick with people, okay? So reviews of people. What could I write as a sentence that follows this? It says, the broth tastes good. There's my straight up subject, direct sentence. It doesn't have anything to do with my personal experience. It has to do with someone else's personal experience. But you've captured your audience's attention because guess what? They're hungry. And they're thinking, broth. And they want it to taste good, right? Everybody has their own personal feeling about good. But how do they know that you're actually telling the truth? What about these reviews of people? How do I put that into a sentence? Yes?
You can say reviews have shown that the product contains this herb which magnifies whatever.
Uh-oh. Okay, so this reviews show what?
That the broth.
The product, what? The product contains, now,
Healthy ingredients.
healthy ingredients. But are healthy things good to eat?
No, not all the time.
No. Reviews show the product contains. Is that gonna help us out in tasting good?
Pressure.
No. Reviews show that what? The product what? Can we just make it simple? Who likes it?
And people like it.
People like it. Consumers like it, right? We're trying to think about vocabulary. Remember, we're changing our words around a little bit. So someone who buys something is called a consumer, right? So reviews show the product. Can I just say it simply? Mike?
As favorable results.
As favorable results? Sure, but I don't know results of what, because I haven't made any statement about it, but about any kind of taste test or anything like that.
About cells.
Oh, reviews show the product sells well
In large quantities?
in large quantities. Sure, but hold on a second.
Sells well.
Now I'm making assumptions. Oh, this is hard, isn't it? Writing all of a sudden got challenging, didn't it? Because what you're trying to say and what you're actually writing down may be two different things. Do you see how all of a sudden you're writing things? You're saying, reviews show the product sells in large quantities. Well, that doesn't prove to me that it tastes good. All that means is a lot of people are hungry and soup was the only thing available.
But I
Okay?
know if they buy it and it tastes like crap.
Right,
It tastes
I
good.
prefer bad, but crap is fine too.
What about, based on customers' reviews and quantity of.
So are we focused on the product or are we focused on the people who like the product?
We need more of the people in the product.
We need to focus on the people who like the product because guess what? It tastes good, right? So we have to define that it tastes good based on what other people think. We can't use our personal experience, so how do we take other people's perspectives and put them into a sentence that actually proves that the broth tastes good?
We go based on 100 surveys.
Okay, so reviews show
the
that-
flavor of the flavor of the broth
That's favorable.
tastes well.
who likes it. Reviews show that consumers, right? Remember we came up with that term? Consumers, what? Did they favor it over another?
Have given
Favor
positive reviews.
Oh, okay, there we go. Have given positive reviews. Okay, reviews show that consumers have given positive reviews.
Yeah, okay.
Now we're being repetitive.
Okay, yeah.
What about compliments?
We're not there, we're not doing
Or
very
result.
good on
You're
that.
doing great, you're doing great. Reviews show that consumers have given positive
Feedback.
feedback. There we go. We're coming up with it. You guys are smart. You're coming up with the words. You guys got it. Okay, look what we just did.
Well,
Hold on.
it's missing that taste.
Reviews show that consumers have given positive feedback.
Positive
How about regarding
Test.
flavor?
test.
Is that good?
Regarding the flavor.
Regarding flavor. Now,
Bring it down
this
to
is a
broth.
very complicated sentence right now for you guys, as far as I'm concerned, because we need to back this off. We need to slow down, and we need to look at what makes up this sentence that you just created. But the point I'm trying to get at with these two sentences is that you're able to create sentences where the meanings connect. Okay? Up until now, most of your writing probably takes the shape of a personal narrative, which means you write about your own experience. We have to get away from that and start writing about not personal experience, but the experience of others, and the focus should be on the subject. So, what is our subject? It shouldn't be you.
Broth.
It should be whatever that particular topic indicates is small enough to write a paragraph about. Okay? So if I look at soup, let's look at another topic. Okay, I like our sentence up there. I'm going to leave that up there for a minute, okay? And you guys have that the subject is the main focus of a small piece of writing, okay? That's what we're focused on in this class. We're writing paragraph and we're writing sentences, all right? Everybody clear on that? Paragraph and sentences. That's what we're going to focus on right now. We're going to get away from that personal narrative. So let's look at a topic that perhaps is more prevalent in your lives right now. Let's try to do this again. So how about, let's say, education, because that's going on in your lives right now, education. What about education? Is education something that I can write about in a small paragraph and completely exhaust, completely?
Yes.
You think so? Really? Because when I think about education, I think about preschool, first grade, second grade, third grade. I think about textbooks and teachers and markers and pens and pencils, and you know the pencil is made from wood, and wood comes from a tree, and trees are...
That would be the subject within the education.
You see what I'm getting
Yeah,
at?
I think it'd be a wide area.
Right, but see, it takes a moment for us to realize that that topic that we think we can fully exhaust in a paragraph is actually too big. So what is it that we have to do in order to fully exhaust? We have to break it down. So let's pick a couple of things that we could write about. What do you think?
High school.
High school, okay, still kind of big though. High school is one. Let's break it down one more.
5th grade.
5th grade, okay.
Geography.
Geography. Now, if I think about subject, if I were to write the word geography as a topic, is that big? Is that an essay? That's a big topic, right? But if you said the subject of geography, now I'm talking about a subject in school, right? Now it's smaller, isn't it? We changed it just by adding a few words. Okay, let's look for something smaller to write about in education. What are you guys most familiar with when it comes to your education? Come on, let's be honest.
Learning.
You sure?
Supplies.
You
Money.
sure? There it is, money.
Money.
Right? The financial costs, right? I know how much it costs to go to school. I'm still paying for it. Believe it or not. I'm working to pay for myself to have gone to school, to pay for myself to go to school. It's a horrible cycle to get into. So, my education relates to financial costs. What's the difficulty there?
There's a wide range of topics that
Right.
the financial costs.
Okay, but we know that it's broken down a little bit more, so what about financial costs?
Textbooks.
Expense.
Okay, so how about
Supplies.
materials?
Student loans.
Materials?
Lunch.
Aha! Feeding oneself.
I know it's not really
I'm hungry.
related to education, but financial, it is a financial expense.
Absolutely. Every
You
day.
know, it's the notes, the pens, the paper, that everything.
So it's all our
everything-
materials?
Yes.
But I
materials.
like lunch personally. I'm a big fan. And I'm especially hungry right now. So let's look at
Yes.
what do we call that though? I don't want to call it lunch.
Living expenses.
Meals, living expenses,
Chow.
food, chow.
Grub.
What would you choose?
Cafeteria?
Cafeteria. Okay, so how about we say cafeteria expense? I like that. That's a good topic. You know why? Because it also has another part of speech that you guys use on a regular basis called an adjective. Okay? An adjective is what? A word that describes a noun. Good. So we're starting to get our parts of speech mixed in here too. What you're going to start to see with this class is that we're talking about 3 different areas. Content, writing technique, and the breakdown of grammar. And they all coincide. So I could spend a whole day talking to you just about nouns and defining them, but unless you see them in action, it's not really going to click as to why their meaning matters so much. Notice the difference here. Our meaning of broth tasting good, all of a sudden, can't connect to reviews about whether the broth was thick or not. It has to do with whether or not consumers actually liked it. Do you follow where I'm going with this? Meaning connects sentences. But meaning comes from words, which are parts of speech, which thus connect the sentences. So you have to put all of them together, okay? And over time, you'll start to see that even more. So we're over here, cafeteria expense. I like that. It has something else. So what about the cafeteria expense, Sandra? You're on the spot now.
Tutoring? I'm sorry, you're talking about
Cafeteria expense.